problem 859 on page 126 in a different way. I've already set the limits for this metric drawing. So I'm going to draw a circle at the origin. So I'm going to type in 0, 0, and then 20 for its radius. Draw another circle 68 units above it, 17.5 units in radius. The next circle is going to be 25 units to the left with a radius of 11. Move it down 7 units. I'll mirror that across the centers. Now I need to draw lines that are tangent to both sets of circles here. So I'm going to shift right click and get the tangent override. It's called the snap override. I'll do that to both sets of circles. So it'll override the quadrant. See, if I go over the quadrant, it'll just do the tangent because I overrode it. And I'll take those two and mirror those across. Center vertical. Trim out everything I can. And now I have the outline shape that I want to start with. Now I want it to be a single shape, so I'm going to use the join command and select all the objects. So J space and then select them all. Now it's all one shape. This is perfect for what I want to do. I want to give it some thickness and give it a 3D shape. So I'm going to go to my 3D modeling for my workspace. Now if you don't see workspace, you want to make sure that's checked from that pull down. And then I can pull down the list of workspaces once I have that, and I'll choose 3D modeling. Okay, so in my 3D modeling, I can choose the extrude tool in the modeling section of the home ribbon, and choose the polyline that I just created with the join command, space, and then I'll ask how the height of the extrusion that I set 9. Now, I am on 2D wireframe in the top view, as I can see on the upper left corner of my screen. So I want to choose from the top, and I can go to southeast or southwest isometric, and I can see that the object does have its height. It's in a wireframe model, so I can change that to conceptual and go back and forth between them. So at this point, I want to draw the cylinders and do some other modeling. I can use these primitive objects, such as the cylinder. I can snap it right to the center of the arc on that shape, and it will auto snap to the surface of this instead of go at 0. And I want to set the radius, which is 17.5, and I'll set the height to whatever it is, which is 19. I'll do the same thing to the center here for the radius and the height. Just hit spacebar to enter the last commands I had. Now there's also a hole, and the rest of them are basically I just need to cut away at this basic shape. So the first thing I want to do is set more cylinders for the holes. So I'm going to snap to the top surface of this cylinder, and the hole sizes are 19 units in diameter, which is 9.5 units in radius. And I want to set the height to actually be below the object, so I can do that to both of them. Space and space. And this way I can pan, and I can also hold the shift key while I pan, and I can see that there are these cylinders that are inside. So I'm going to use the 3D move tool. If I select an object, I can click on its grip and move it in the +Z with the polar snapping. And if they're passing through the object, I can use these. Escape to deselect. I can use these to cut holes in both the objects. And so I'm going to use the intersect, or the solid subtract. I mean, the intersect is a different method, but I'll use the solid subtract, and I'll pick the objects I want to subtract from, which will be the base and the 2 outer cylinders. space, and then I'll choose the two objects I want to subtract, use as the subtracting. At that point, I've cut holes in the object, in all three objects. Now there's a hole also, and some slots to create. So I'll make another cylinder, and this time I want to make that cylinder in the position that it is. And I can use coordinates here because I know it's 0 in the x, so I'll just type 0, comma, and then in the y direction, the cylinder is going to be 34 units. And in the z direction, I'm going to put 0. And I don't know if that actually did that. Didn't quite work. So I'll just use my regular snapping. I'm going to hit F. Well, I'll show you. I'll try the cylinder again, and I want to track from the centers of these cylinders. However, if I do that, I can do the 34, and the radius is going to be 5. That seems to be okay. So I can set the height. Now I can set the subtract tool, check that base, space, and the cylinder. Got it. Now, I want to also create a box for the slots in the two cylinders. So I'll use the box primitive, and I'll just create it out here. And I'm going to use a relative coordinate, and I don't care how long it is in the x direction, so I'll just use 50. And in the y direction it needs to be 14 because that's the width of the slot. And now it's asking for the height, and it doesn't matter how tall it is as long as it's higher than the depth of the slot, which is 5, so that'll easily do it. Now I want to move this box to the right position. So I can do this in this view, but maybe it's going to be easier in the top view. So I'm going to click on the top and select my box. I can even use wireframe to perhaps make this a little easier to see. So I can grab the center of that box and just put it at the center. I'm going to make a copy of it and set the base point at the cylinder. Oh, I need to be away from conceptual, so now it's a little easier. So copy. I can use the base point to base point. Now I can see they're sort of in position, but they're at the base, they're at Z 0, and they both need to be, I'm going to move them. So I'm going to type in 3DM for 3D move, and I will set the base point at the center at 0, and then I'll just move up in the Z, well, I'll just type in 0, 0, comma, and I want to raise it 23 units. And that way, if I go to conceptual, I can see that those boxes are in position. And the only thing left to do is subtract them. And now I have the complete model of the object